If I could ask everybody who's not seated to come on in, we're going to get started. We actually try to be on time. Renee, Eric, come on up. So while they're settling in, I'm going to give some remarks, and I'm going to start with good afternoon. Come on, good afternoon. Come on, you guys got to be awake by now. And welcome to Public Health Grand Rounds at the Aspen Institute. We really are delighted that you're here for what promises to be an extraordinary program. I am Ruth Katz, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Health Medicine and Society program, which is the sponsor of Public Health Grand Rounds at the Aspen Institute. Our program borrows from the time-honored Grand Rounds tradition in medicine, which is designed to keep clinicians up to date about scientific and medical innovations and to promote excellence in research and practice. The goals of Public Health Grand Rounds are exactly the same, except the focus of the sessions is on the cutting edge issues of public health or population health. And boy, do we have such a topic for you today. The power of the arts, particularly music, to be effective tools for both addressing a wide variety of health conditions and advancing well-being in general. With more and more scientific evidence to back it up, this work, now generally recognized as the burgeoning field of neuroarts, brings together scientists, artists, health professionals, technologists, academics, and others, all committed to seeing the arts in their many, many forms become part of mainstream medicine and public health. No one, and I do mean no one, has done more to advance this cause than today's special Grand Rounds guest, Renée Fleming. Renée will be speaking about her new book, Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness, which was released just last week. Obviously, since you all clapped, Renée really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give a brief one anyway, because I think you need to hear just a smidgen of all that she does and all that she has already accomplished. Renée Fleming is one of the most highly acclaimed singers of our time, performing on the stages of the world's greatest opera houses and concert halls. She has also sung at momentous occasions such as the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony and the Super Bowl. Her numerous awards include the U.S. National Medal of Arts, the 2023 Kennedy Center Honor, and 5 Grammy Awards. A leading advocate for research at the intersection of arts and health, Renée launched the first ongoing collaboration between the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the National Institutes of Health, and has been appointed a Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health by the World Health Organization. In addition to all this, and I really just gave you a smidgen, and very, very lucky for us, Renée currently serves as co-chair of the Neuro Arts Blueprint Initiative, a partnership between the Aspen Institute and the International Arts and Mind Lab at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Released in 2021, the blueprint lays out a detailed plan for building the field of neuroarts with the ultimate goal, as I said before, of seeing arts become part of mainstream medicine and public health. We are now in the process of implementing the recommendations specified in the blueprint, including strengthening the research foundation of neuroarts. To that end, through her foundation, Renée has established the Renée Fleming NeuroArts Investigator Awards. This first of its kind research program is designed to support innovative and collaborative neuroarts basic and applied research conducted by early career investigators. The NeuroArts Blueprint is honored to administer the awards, the inaugural group of which will be announced this week. Now, a spoiler alert, the individuals receiving this extraordinary honor, coming from across the country and representing a variety of art disciplines, are all doing incredibly exciting and promising work, all of which will help build the scientific foundation for the field of neuroarts. Thank you, Renée, for your vision, for your leadership, for your commitment, and for so much more. And of course, for being here today to tell us all about your new book, Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness. Now, interviewing Renée is one of Aspen Institute's most prominent and beloved staff alums, Eric Motley, and I know a lot of you know Eric. Eric left us for the National Gallery of Arts a couple of years ago, where he now serves as deputy director. Before holding a variety of executive positions at the Aspen Institute, Eric was in leadership roles at the US State Department and at the White House. He sits on numerous boards, including those of the Morgan Library and Museum and the Whitney Museum of American Art. And like Renée, Eric is also an author. His 2017 memoir, Madison Park, A Place of Hope, tells the story of the small Alabama community where Eric was raised and which was founded in 1880 by a group of freed slaves. And I just learned today that Eric's little girl is named Madison. Like I said at the start, a truly amazing program today. Now, before I turn things over to Eric, a few housekeeping notes to share. First, we are videotaping today's program. It will be up on the Health Medicine Society website and the NeuroArts Blueprint website within the next 24 to 48 hours. Our interview will run about 40 minutes or so, after which we will open the conversation up to take your questions and comments. Please wait for a microphone before speaking, and please do introduce yourself and affiliation first. Time is tight. We do try to end on time, so time is tight for the Q&A portion of the program, and we want to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So please be brief and get right to your question. Finally, you probably already noticed Renée's book is available for sale right outside this room, right after the program is over, if you haven't already picked up one. You can also get it through Amazon or through the publisher Viking. With that, many thanks to Renée and to Eric for taking time from their incredibly busy schedules to participate in our Grand Rounds program today. Thanks as well to Katja Wander in the back, who organizes us all so well. And of course, many, many thanks to all of you for joining us. It really is great to have you here. And with that, Eric, the Aspen stage is once again all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth.
Thank you.
Renée, it's always a pleasure to listen to you, to talk to you, to be with you. And I have to say that I actually have you on repeat. I always have you on repeat at home, but I actually have you on repeat now because we have this 12-week-old child, and your voice is in the crib. Let's just say that. I'm taking this brain music to a whole nother level, you know?
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Hopefully I'll get to hear her sing some of these pieces in a couple of years.
The sound might be a bit foreign, but you will. So thank you. This is an incredible book. And there's so much to talk to you about. And I'm going to be very quick so that I can give all of my friends here in the room an opportunity to ask their questions as well. But Dr. Francis Collins, former director of NIH, actually in his introduction begins at the very beginning of this in many ways. He tells a story, and the story is about a small gathering of friends. It's a day after, it's 2015, it's a day after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriage. You want to take it from there?
Yeah, that was incredible because there were 3 justices at this dinner, coincidentally. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Antonin Scalia, and Anthony Kennedy. And they were not particularly making eye contact that day, because it was, as RBG said in a film later on, it was a really contentious ruling, and especially Antonin Scalia just wrote, he was really upset about it. However, Francis Collins, I had never met him before. Dr. Collins was, until recently, the head of the National Institutes of Health, and he brought his guitar, and now I know he always brings his guitar. And he's a terrific triple threat musician. He composes, he writes lyrics, and he plays and sings. And I think he made his debut at 6 on the pump organ. So he had a very musical background. So we just started singing together, and he had a fake book, and there was a trio already playing there, kind of a like a country bluegrass style trio, and so we just kept singing all night, and the kind of culmination, and everybody relaxed, everybody had a ball, they had so much fun smoking the cigar, Scalia, and just enjoying the evening. And the song of choice at the end was "The Times They Are Changing," which was kind of apt.
Yeah.
So I said to him during that night, I said, "Why are scientists studying music?" Because, you know, I appreciate it. I understood, you know, kind of the benefits of it from my audience perspective, but I couldn't imagine why science was interested in it. He said, "We have a new brain institute, and this is the most complex object in the universe, known universe." And he said, music activates more parts of the brain, the mapped brain so far, than any other activity. And so we want to study it to understand more about the brain. So I said, "Do you think," I had just been appointed advisor to the Kennedy Center, and I said, "Do you think we could provide a platform for the science? Because I think the audience would really be interested in this, like I am. I think they'll be fascinated to learn about the science of art and how we perceive and enjoy, and also are actively involved with art." And so that started the Sound Health Networks, and the Sound Health Initiative kind of got underway.
And a couple of weeks later, if not months later, you found yourself at NIH with a whole group of scientists using a lot of acronyms and words that were probably not commonplace to you. What was that experience? I think Deborah Rutter was one side and Francis Collins was to the other side, right?
So this was in January of 17, and it was 2 days. It was the first time that music therapists had been invited into the hallowed halls of the NIH. And they presented, also many researchers and basic science researchers presented in kind of 10-minute incremental presentations. And I thought, I'm not going to understand any of this. This is going to go right over my head. I loved it. I was on fire. I was so passionate from that moment on to know more and to share it with you all. And the book is the culmination of that. But so it was, Deborah Rutter had to agree to this, by the way, which she graced, thank goodness she did. And the NEA also joined us in this effort. But from that, and of course I had an experiment at the NIH myself. So from that point on, this whole field of arts and health has been exploding. It's really exciting to witness.
Yeah. We know you have a beautiful voice, but tell us about your brain. Because they persuaded her to go through a series of MRIs for 2 hours, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I want to know about your brain, Renee.
Yes. Okay. Well, I can tell you, my brain. So the experiment included me singing, imagining, singing, and speaking. And so singing was more powerful than speaking in terms of activation. So the fMRI machine measures oxygen levels in the brain. And so you can kind of see colorful kind of activity in the pictures that they took. And it's hard because you can't really sing and not move at all. So they had to kind of, you know, figure out how to interpret what they got. But imagining singing was by far the most powerful and the most active. And so the scientists were very surprised by this. But they eventually said, we think it's because you're a singer. So the singing part was easy for you, second nature. And whereas imagining singing, I had to tune out the noise and focus a little bit more and concentrate, et cetera. So for somebody, a non-singer, who knows, the experiment could have ended up being different.
Yeah. I want to go back to early in your career, you discovered you had stage fright. I just can't imagine Renée Fleming stage fright, but it was also with a lot of pain. Could you speak a bit about that?
So stage fright, I was not a natural performer. I was a very shy bookworm child, reserved, in fact. And I had to watch friends and observe friends because I did love music and singing. That was always a part of my history, to kind of just be comfortable auditioning. So I had terrible bouts of intense stage fright, and the worst one was in around 99. And I almost quit singing. So the thing you do when you have stage fright is you can't stop. If you stop, it might be 20 years or never that you get back on stage, because that's how horrible it is. And alongside that, I had somatic pain. We used to call it psychosomatic pain. And I knew it was psychosomatic because as miserable as I would be, and it was typically a lot of tension around my neck, I couldn't sing. And it would lift magically when I walked on stage. So, but you're suffering tremendously leading up to that. And the two things together, were difficult. And the somatic pain really never quite went away, but the stage fright did. So you have to I saw the audience as judgmental, as judgmental as critics are and were. And I learned actually to see myself as a conduit for beauty, as a conduit for the music that other people created, and sharing art with the audience. So I needed to reframe what performing was. Performance is built into the name. You have to perform. You have to reach a yardstick, a certain height. And so that really helped. Understanding the roots of it was also important. So, and I wrote a chapter about this in The Inner Voice to help other people who suffer from all of that. It was a success conflict. I didn't feel comfortable being in the limelight. So all of the above, And that got me really interested in the mind-body connection, but also in understanding the neuroscience. Neuroscience was they were beginning to write a lot about this type of thing. And that's how I came across scientists studying music.
I read The Inner Voice, beautiful book. It was not 513 pages.
No, no.
And this book is an incredible book because really it's an anthology and you're the editor. I think it's your first book editing, no?
Oh, absolutely.
And so what was that process like? How did you choose the individuals who wrote these wonderful essays? How is it organized? Give us some insight into the way you thought about this book.
Well, first of all, I was inspired by David Rubenstein. So I had interviewed him for the 92nd Street Y during the pandemic. His book on leadership, which I loved. And I thought, wow, he's got something there. You get everyone else to write the chapters and you're the editor. I said, I can do that. I don't have to go through the suffering I went through for The Inner Voice. Ann Patchett and I wrote that together. And little did I know, I get involved in these things not knowing enough about them and not realizing how much work it is. But then it's too late. So, and then I wanted, this was for you. I wanted to give this also as a gift to all of the people working in the field, because I've been advocating for the science and for all of the work. And I thought, I don't think enough people understand or know about it. So I'm going to put this out so people have a chance at kind of seeing the breadth of it. Like, I didn't know in the beginning that people performing in a lobby of a hospital is not the same as what a music therapist does, or a creative arts therapist who is licensed, who has had, most of them, a master's degree in this type of work. And they're doing very specific interventions that have a specific outcome that has been scientifically proven. So the rigor of science is important. There was so much I didn't know when I sat at that conference table. I didn't understand how micro, how small the baby steps of research are, because we're still really in the beginning of the research. The end result, hopefully, is that it's covered by insurance and that everybody has access to this, all of this work. So I organized it this way. So my way in, first of all, neuroanatomy. Dan Levitin wrote a beautiful chapter explaining the brain. Secondly, evolution. Ani Patel speaks so eloquently about evolution and has for a long time, but he studies animals to understand us. And then going through the pillars, childhood development, education. There's a big section on arts education. Where is it really today? Where is it robust? Where is it not robust? Obviously, the therapeutic benefits of, it's mostly music, but we have also great chapters on visual arts. Anna DeVere Smith, her contribution, and also Liz Diller on architecture. If I had to do it today instead of 3 years ago, I would have done a neuroarts book, like Your Brain on Art, but including neuroarts as the umbrella, and music, I would say, is the first topic underneath the umbrella. It has the most research. It's been around the longest, I would say, not in terms of existing and working, but in terms of science.
You bring so many voices to the table. They're creators, they're architects, they're choreographers, writers, they're experts in the field, health practitioners. There's Ann Patchett. And Ann Patchett writes about her dislike of opera and how she decided that she would train her mind. Could you talk a bit about that chapter?
So it's also really interesting because I think it's the 20th anniversary of Bel Canto.
Yes.
So it's about how she came to writing Bel
Yeah.
Canto and how she wrote it. And I thought, wow, the fans of the book who have always believed that I am Roxanne Koss, which, to be fair, she didn't know me. So, and she'd never read an interview about me, but she did use my recordings when she made the book, and that's how that came to be. But she's a really close friend, and I'm thrilled that she wrote that chapter.
Music psychotherapist Stacy Adele, he writes. I mean, tell us a bit about that chapter.
Stacy's chapter is so moving because she had a creative injury, which I didn't know that term. So she was a budding hip hop performer, and she got kind of eaten up by the recording industry and spit out. And she took her a long time to recover. And in recovering, she kind of pursued a degree in this kind of the therapeutic value of music so she could heal herself. And she's become a fabulous music therapist. And her stories are
the small boy with sickle cell.
I know, I know. And she really helped this child with pain. So pain is one of the major pillars of research, by the way, because obviously we're having major issues with opioid addiction, et cetera. And the beauty of the research is that it shows truly that listening to and engaging with music and the arts alleviates pain. And some of it is distraction, but not all of it. It really it changes the brain. I just saw images of the brain in somebody having excruciating pain, listening to in general, and then listening to music, and the picture is completely different in the brain.
This little boy listened to Fox on repeat over and over again, right? Yes?
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, it's very exciting what's happening.
I want to go to one or two other contributors. David Leventhal, Music and Movement. He's a wonderful choreographer. Could you speak about his edition, his essay?
So David Leventhal and Mark Morris writes one too, because David was in his ballet company, and they decided together to kind of start this working with Parkinson's patients. Somebody had reached out to them and asked them. And so Dance for PD was born. And especially during the pandemic, he was giving lessons to maybe 20 teachers at a time in the New York area. And suddenly he was teaching 800 teachers around the world, many in China. And so movement disorders are hugely benefited by music. So you can, with Parkinson's or MS or traumatic brain injury, if you have issues with movement, music and rhythm can absolutely help you. By the way, it's all brain plasticity. Start to move fluidly, stop shuffling. And I learned in December at our second convening, that audiation, which is a term that we use in music, which is imagining music, and we all do it, can help. You can bypass even listening actively to music or rhythm and just think of when the Saints go marching in, and you'll be able to cross the street without any problem. I'm talking about a Parkinson's patient.
So is that remembering the first dance at your wedding? Is that remembering the song or the song that your mother would sing to you as a child? Is that?
Well, this would be something rhythmic that can help you move. But memory is another area that's hugely linked to music. And it's the last, music memory is the last to go in patients with advanced dementia and Alzheimer's disease. I saw this with my husband's aunt. If you cued her with a word, "Oh, when the Saints," or anything, with her, it was, "I'm looking over." 5 or 6 songs, she would then sing perfectly all the lyrics, but she didn't know any of the people around her and couldn't speak otherwise. So they're starting to try and unpack what that is. And also they're trying, there's a great movie on YouTube called Alive Inside, if some of you have come across it. It's very moving. There's a character, a man named Henry in it. And if you just watch his segment, he comes alive with these songs that he loved. And researchers are like Constance Tomino or Conchetta Tomino are trying to sustain and extend those moments of identity from the memory of a song.
The book is so informative and rich, but it's also beautifully written and lyrical. I mean, Powers writes about grief, and Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, Richard Powers, I'm a huge fan. I'm sure all of you are. Have you read The Overstory and some of the beautiful books that he's written? He just interviewed me for the Authors Forum in Louisville. And he writes always about science, nature, and he loves music as well. But his book takes folk song as a proxy, enabling us to really, it's a proxy for grief. So, which is true. I love sad songs. I've always loved sad songs. And I also always wondered what it was about stringed instruments, whether it's violins in an orchestra or guitar, that seemed to go directly to my heart. In other words, that where I can feel and have instant emotion. I mean, you probably all have music that does that to you. So he writes a beautiful chapter about that. I mean, he's so eloquent anyway.
Yeah.
This is why it was actually not such a great idea having him interview me, because I just wanted to listen to him talk. I didn't want to talk very much. So yeah, there are a lot of different things, and I want to point out also 2 chapters that made me cry, or 3 actually. Stanford Thomas, these are, and Francisco Nunez, who are young men who saw a need in their communities, and they created programs that address that need, that have been incredibly impactful, have grown. One is in Philadelphia called Play on Philly, that was related also probably to Marin Alsop in the orchestra, but kids who were problem children, who were having real difficulty in school, he gave them a music education, gave them an instrument, cared about them, instructed them. Guess what? They very often turned out to be leaders.
Wow.
They became huge leaders in their groups. And Francisco had a different vision in New York City, but he put together children, well, this is New York, by the way, who were incredibly privileged, had everything, with children who were on the opposite end of that spectrum, lower socioeconomic spectrum, and put them together, tours them all over the world, puts them in a very high standard of musical preparation, and he's been enormously successful so that they have real understanding, and they all live in the same city.
Yeah.
So Tom Schweitzer would be the third, who's in Middleburg.
Yeah.
So in fact, he wrote his own chapter and we rewrote it, because I said, he's not saying enough about the incredible thing he's done for this community. He's not saying enough about how special he is. So I said, add this. I mean, this is a guy who wrote a musical called The Will to Survive that should be in every middle school, about suicide, that has kids, when it's played, rushing the stage when it's over, because they say, you understand me. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm dealing with. And so often these things aren't addressed because people are afraid. You know, they're afraid, they don't know what the reaction will be, et cetera. So that's just one example of what he's done.
You know, what is most impressive too is that it's not just about the therapeutic impact that music has on one, but also the human evolution. I want to go back to having a child and now thinking about the brain development and the impact that music had. Could you say a bit more about exposing children at an early age to music and brain development?
It's so important. I mean, and it has to be active. It's, you know, there's been a tremendous amount of research on instrumental music in children having lasting changes in the brain after 2 years of study. It helps children focus. We know, I mean, just intrinsically, just studying an instrument, self-discipline, focus, but also tuning out extraneous noise in an academic setting. And it is remarkably impactable. And in fact, another reason I didn't mention that I got into this is because everywhere I've sung in the world, and I've sung on every continent, I think, I could always get the best medical care. You know, if I had a sore throat, the best. And you know why? How many doctors do you know are amateur musicians? Like almost all of them. They just grew up playing instruments, and I don't quite understand the connection, but it seems to be there. And the same is true for Robert Smith, who's chairman of Carnegie Hall. I'm on the board of Carnegie Hall, said the same is true for CEOs. he talks at a convention and he'll say, how many of you played an instrument or, engaged in a choir or something? And he said, they all raise their hand.
He sings? Is he musical?
He is musical
Okay.
because his parents,
Okay.
we bonded over Leontine Price. By the way, I saw her
Did she?
a month ago. She's in amazing form. And she always answers the door singing a high C for a
Does
long
she?
time.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
And I'm always
Yeah.
momentarily jealous. And
Yeah.
then I'm thrilled. And I'm absolutely so uplifted. I mean, because I used to sit on the subway when I was a Juilliard student from Queens to Juilliard going, please God, give me Leontine Price's high C. And I never did get it.
What a lady.
And she still has it.
Still sings.
She's 97.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You sent our little child a backpack of musical instruments and a copy of a book called The Dog That Sang at the Opera.
My two favorites.
Yes, yes. And so she's making a lot of joyful noise around the house, thanks to you.
Good. They love it.
Yeah.
I saw this with, we have a grandchild, 2 now, and they really love playing those little instruments.
Yeah. This is a burgeoning field. We've seen a lot of new initiatives developed. We have neuro arts. We have Susan here. We have Ruth Katz. You're working with them. We also have sound health. Could you say a bit about these initiatives and where they're taking us and the blueprint for the future?
So neuro arts, I just adore. And if you haven't read Your Brain on Art, you must.
Susan is here with us right now. So.
Yes, raise your hand. So yes. And it is incredible, and it is changing really the way people think about art. And by the way, I am now the poster child for neuro arts because I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is. So starting January 1st, I really kind of reduced my time engaging with opinion news to almost nothing. I want just to know what happened in the day, and I am every day allowing myself to do something I love. I'm going to museums. I am listening to music. I'm going to theater. I am a huge theater fanatic. I'm seeing Macbeth this week. And walking outside. I mean, every aesthetic experience. And do you know what? I am 10 times happier. I'm certainly happier than I was in 2016.
Yeah.
So it's good for us. It is genuinely good for us. And I can say it honestly. But neuro arts is really my favorite because it does encompass so many more things that are artistic pursuits. I always have to mention doodling because I think it's really neat that that's part of the book. And underneath that, as I said, music is major. The Sound Health Network is something that occurred because I kept complaining to my NIH Kennedy Center and NEA colleagues that we needed a website. So because there was too much redundant research being done in, because I was in Canada and North America, and I'd say, and I'd be in Florida and somebody was saying, I'm doing a keyboard, study on, creative aging. And I said, well, do you know about the study in Calgary in Canada? And of course, no one did. So now NeuroArts is at UCSF. It's funded by the NEA. And they put together a phenomenal resource center that I highly recommend if you're interested in music. This is all music research. And NeuroArts is putting out one in the fall, in September, right? A big resource center that's international and that includes all of the arts. So I think we'll have now these places to go to find out what's going on and be connected, to receive newsletters, to be more in the know, and also for researchers themselves to connect, which is important. And of course, the Sound Health Network that's one area.
Right.
But the Kennedy Center is still doing this work, and they're moving into a more general health and wellness phase, which is really fascinating because that's what we need. This needs to be a part of our lives, and not something that we turn to when we're not well.
Ruth Katz here has integrated all of this work throughout all the policy programs at the Aspen Institute, both policy and leadership programs, because it's integrative. So I'm curious, as we think about the blueprint for the future, how do we get insurance companies to want to cover musical therapy?
Well, it's fascinating because the fact that the NIH has stepped up and has funded $30 million of research, that really puts this on the map. So far, they're doing music only, but they're adding movement. It's kind of logical. Certainly, as I mentioned for Parkinson's, that is a movement kind of intervention and requires that research. So that's important. So we need in the US specifically a high level of research for insurance to even consider it. I was shocked to find out that acupuncture is covered, has achieved that goal. And it's because people advocate for it, they press for it. And then the research has to be there that really supports it. And so it's happening.
It is happening
now. It will take a little bit of time. And it's also the licensure for music therapists is state by state. And I think there are only 12 states now that currently have it. And I don't know what is it for the other arts in general. Same. Yeah. So there's a way to go. We also now are starting to have this social prescribing. Right. So that where doctors are saying, hey, you know what, I think you're actually lonely. So let's get you in some groups, let's get you kind of involved, or you need to go outside, you need to be in a park system, or I'm going to connect you with music therapy. So there are a few states that have this now, which is fantastic.
We know major institutions like Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, have been doing this for some while, and they're seeding a lot of these ideas all across the country.
Well, if you're in a hospital with either a window looking out at greenery or a picture on your wall, your kind of average stay is going to be 2 days less than other people. I mean, statistics like that are helping.
It's a proven fact that the audience always asks better questions than the interviewer. So I'm going to give you the opportunity of really, really stepping up. Do we have any questions?
How about any experiences you've all had with family members? I always love hearing about that because a lot of people will say, I get this because of X, Y, and Z. Yes.
We're going to wait till the mic come to you, and you'll identify yourself. And
hi, James Figatakis. Hi, Susan.
Thank you.
I can't believe I'm speaking to Renée Fleming because I've followed you for the last 20 years and went to the Kennedy Center Honors because you were being honored there.
Oh, thank you.
It was extraordinary.
Thank you.
You've touched on so many issues. And one of the things, a buddy of mine and I just went back to Cleveland for the eclipse. And we were there, and in the morning, I spent the morning with my father who's dying. And it's really interesting that at the end of life, the last sense one has is hearing and music. And when I had one of the priests come in and give him last rites, who was an opera singer before he became a priest.
Oh, wow.
Greek Orthodox priest, my father said, please sing me Aida and Carmen.
Oh.
Yeah. So I just touch on that because you've touched on so many points. And all I'm going to say is, I don't know how you do everything you do. It's extraordinary, but thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Person right here. Right here. Second
I'm
row.
actually touring a piece with National Geographic right now. So that's a climate project. So you're not wrong. I'm doing a lot. Some people would say too much.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Hamda O'Brien, a retired nurse midwife. I'd like to know effect of music during pregnancy on the infant, on the baby.
So I actually have not personally come across research about that. I think it's understood that the fetus can hear, and they do recognize, of course, parents' voices when they're born. They're bathed in rhythm. So everything about the body is rhythm, whether it's blood or heartbeat. This is what they're born with. So that's another reason why children are so responsive to it. There's a fabulous study now that we're talking about a lot that has proven that women with postpartum depression, if they sing in a choir, they are immensely improved. And the more depressed they are, the more difficult the postpartum depression, the more the benefit of singing in a choir. I was surprised by that. So there are definite benefits for infants. Bonding is one when they're born, but as far as in the womb, effects of music, I don't know. Are you aware of any research on that?
The mic. Susan, could you
Okay,
repeat
so-
that, will you?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really beautiful research recently about the amplification and resonance of sound for in utero, and that's really fascinating. So it's so multi-amplified because the fetus is so much smaller than the womb, and so there's an instant kind of synchronicity. But there's a book called Origins that's all about in utero sound and sensorial experiences. That's really
There you go.
worth listening.
And I would be interested, first of all, we'd all want to know what music to play. You know, the Mozart effect was kind of refuted, but not that Mozart's not wonderful. Of course it is.
You know, this was Susan, who's at Johns Hopkins University, who's doing a lot of this research.
I was just going to say the Fleming effect. I want to coin that right now.
That's right.
Right
That's
next to
right.
you, we have Dr. Susan Blumenthal, who has a question. I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan Blumenthal. Thank you, Renee, for bringing your eloquence, your elegance, your genius to this incredible issue of really the sociocultural determinants of health. And Eric, thank you for bringing out such important points, because we've learned that 40% of the cause, at least, of disease and promotion of health is related to sociocultural factors, including arts. So I wanted to ask you to come back to this issue of memory, because remember Glenn Campbell, he did 100
Yes.
tours with Alzheimer's disease and found that he could remember the music, but as you said, like no one around him.
Right.
And so I'm wondering sort of what the science looks like there. Like if you take someone back to a time that they remember and play music from that time, has the science shown that there is a calming effect? Does it bring back memories of that time period that you play?
So I just asked Dan Levitin this question, why does it work? And why is this the last memory to go? Because scientists are really starting to look at this. And he said it's very deep in the brain. So that's one of the reasons why. But the memories, and it's personal. It's the things that affected you strongly, typically in your teen years through your early 20s. And those memories are really powerful. And they're also connected to life events, whether it's your wedding or the birth of your child or, very powerful life events. I was, as a very young child, just obsessed with the recording of Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. And I listened to it over and over again. I can still see the record jacket.
Yeah.
And so I've talked about this sometimes because I love contemporary classical music, and I suspect that's why.
Yeah.
So that was a language, because music is a language. And I would say Tony Bennett too, his last concert,
Yeah.
if any of you saw it, was some of the greatest singing that anyone could do. And it sounded improvised. It sounded like he was making it up in the moment. So they're starting to think that muscle memory plays a part in this, that there's another part of the brain that remembers kind of procedural activities, how to do things. And so playing an instrument or singing lyrics are part of that potentially, but they don't quite know yet. Am I missing anything, Susan?
Well, just that you said this earlier, that music is the only thing we know that's distributed all over the brain. And so when you listen to something, it first goes to the hippocampus, but the hippocampus is the part of the brain that deteriorates early with plaque and Alzheimer's or whatever. Yeah. And so, but there's other areas of the brain like the default mode network, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, that's holding redistributed parts of sound and music. And so these other parts of the brains have not been affected yet. So the brain has redundancies. And with music, it holds different aspects of that sound in different parts of the brain. And that's extraordinary. I mean, it's really extraordinary.
That's not the case with poetry, for example, or is it particular to music because of the rhythmic aspect?
I think that's part of what we don't really understand yet. But I think Renee's point is that we're evolved to understand rhythm and pitch and tone, and we're also 60% water, so we resonate. That sound resonates vibrates into our systems immediately, and that's really extraordinary. Poetry does light up some of the same parts of the brain as music does because of the lyrical quality of some poetry. So we do know that's true too.
Speech and all, yeah.
Yes.
I would say one of the points that people have made who have read the whole book and who are really interested in the science is that, it is incredibly complex. Engaging with listening to music is a very complex activity because it uses so many different parts of the brain and senses in terms of sound. But it's that aspect, I think, that enables the plasticity of the brain to be really useful. For instance, if someone is blind, their visual cortex would be used for sound, would be reactivated for hearing. In other words, you start to see with your ears in a way. So this is the wonder of the brain.
Yeah. And probably at a greater amplification.
By the way, Susan, do you tour? I mean, just having her to be able to kind of talk about brain anatomy and all the things that are, it's just really.
Don't worry, if she wasn't here, I would have you covered.
Oh, yes. It's so impressive. It's really impressive.
Any other questions? Yes, we have one right here, this gentleman.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I'm a GW undergrad student studying psychology and music. So thank you for this. This
Great.
has been incredible.
That's a major, psychology of music?
No, psychological and
music.
brain sciences and music. double
Good.
major. My question is about rhythm and music. We've kind of been talking about them interchangeably, but has the research made a distinction as to which one is maybe more effective, or is there a deeper interest in one side of the research for music or rhythm because of these findings?
So I'm aware that there was a study actually for Parkinson's that showed that rhythm only, it was helpful, but most of the studies don't divide them completely. And certainly there are drumming circles that are used in all kinds of wonderful settings, hospital settings, addiction centers, et cetera, that are incredibly useful, but that's a group activity and we know now that group activities and a shared artistic experience kind of elicits our brain waves being connected and being kind of synchronized, which is incredible. And MIT just released something in the last year that kind of bodes well for much more research about these brain waves, because they've learned that it's consistent in various areas and layers of the brain, but it's also consistent across all mammals. And on the video for this, the guy said, I can't believe we didn't discover this already, because it's right there in plain view. So there is a lot of interesting work to be done. But I would say, think about how people use music in a spa setting or in a doctor's office. It's calming. It's not as rhythmic. It's more sustained. And how people, I just learned, are using when they're testing psilocybin, for instance, and psychedelics for veterans. They're using music as a kind of landscape on which someone's emotional life can be coaxed out. It starts calm, and then it gets more and more passionate and rigorous as the intervention kind of proceeds, and then it calms down again to let the patients sort of relax. And so that's a really fascinating area of research as well. And the fact that one of this researcher said these interventions for psilocybin and particularly veterans always have music, always. It's needed, and patients who actually kind of talk about the work afterwards say it really helps them open up, which is part of the process.
Thank you.
There was a few more questions back there.
We have one question up here.
Oh, sorry. Yes, he's picking.
Right there.
Oh.
Thank you. I know at least a few years ago, there were some promising avenues of research that had to do with evolutionary science. In other words, the idea that a tribe that was rhythm was successful in their sitting around the campfire might also be better equipped to work together to hunt an animal or to fight an enemy. Are there still sort of promising avenues that are kind of tied to evolutionary science when you're looking at the arts and human development?
Well, no question. For me, it's the key. It's the reason these things work, because we don't evolve very quickly at all. And so these things are still very much a part of our DNA and a part of who we are. We are tribal beings, unfortunately. We're seeing that in the world today. But it's important. I was just in India on holiday, and in trying to kind of get up to speed on the history of the country, I discovered that there's a Brahmin kind of group of monks who chant in a language that was difficult to decipher. And they finally brought in a whole group of international linguists to try and figure it out. And they said, actually, it predates speech. These are animal sounds. So when you think of all the reasons why we evolved to be musical, say, or to be artistic, they all have to do with tribal connection and survival. So survival could include seduction, but it could also include mimicking animal sounds for hunting purposes. But it goes way back. I mean, the first musical instrument that we know of is 40,000 years old. So way before our written history, and frankly, our history until recently, well, it's been forever that all of our history was recorded in song.
Yeah.
Until relatively recently in human history. So it's incredibly important, and it still works. That's the other thing. I want to go back one step to our science and the requirements in the US for efficacy and acceptance by our medical establishment. It doesn't exist in most of the rest of the world, even in Europe. I tried to present on this in London, and they said, we're not really interested in this because our system is such that if it works, we implement it. So, this is kind of the way things are done in other countries for the most part. We are by far the largest funder of biomedical research in the world. And so we've played an incredibly important role in the development of medicine, surgery, et cetera. Obviously, pharmaceuticals. These are things that are so old and so much a part of who we are that they work without pills, without anything invasive, and with a powerful human connection. And in many ways, that's extremely valuable.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sandra Quinn, Encore Creativity for Older Adults. So you've just finished talking about the demands for evidence that drive prescribing, drive healthcare, insurance, et cetera. But your book says health and wellness. And we're not very good at thinking about funding and wellness, health and wellness kinds of programs. How might we change that with this, new field and effort?
I think that's changing because of the cost of not doing it. And this is why integrative medicine is so powerful now and has grown so much. So I do think it's changing. The NIH is a very specific type of funder. So they're looking for specific kinds of, for instance, my little foundation funded the first conversations about a toolkit for music research to bring the rigor and the efficacy up a huge notch. But they said the applications are still not at the level they would like them to be. They're funding it, but a lot of improvement can occur. But that's just for the NIH. There are many other organizations that fund. I mean, can you speak to this, Susan, for a second, about funding for research? For health, because health and wellness is a huge part of the NeuroArts Blueprint.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more funding in well-being from philanthropy, and I think that's really important. But AARP is really stepping up. And so they're doing two things. One is they're lowering what it means to be a member of AARP. So if you're 40 or older, you're in. And that's because prevention and early intervention is so important. And they're doing they have a new website called Brain Health Action. And so it's about behavior change and starting to teach people that early intervention in the arts is really, really important. And so philanthropy is certainly a big piece of it. We're also seeing a lot of corporations using this as a benefit for retention and recruitment for employees. And so that's another kind of policy where you're seeing a lot of money coming in. And then early childhood, you talked about, that's another policy space where we're really looking at that. And then Renee, you talked about it. If we each adopted our own arts practices for physical health, for mental health, for mobility, for learning, for community engagement, we would, many pieces would create a much larger outcome. So that's also, we're seeing that more and more in a public campaign, which Renee's also been really supporting, where it's really a public health campaign for activating behavioral health. And really 15 minutes a day, is that right? 15 minutes a day, you start to be able to see significant changes in physical and mental health biometrics. And that's a big deal.
So Jeremy Noble's book is called what? The Unlonely Project just came out because, our Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, speaks so eloquently about loneliness and isolation. And also Concetta Tomino has a new book out that's also about elder care and music. So, the landscape of kind of material, media, hopefully some films that are going to be being made. Certainly, Tom Schweitzer, the work that he did with Forrest is called Music Got Me Here. That's on Amazon. And that's about the rehabilitation of a young, incredibly healthy, active man who had a traumatic brain injury while snowboarding without a helmet. And it's his recovery with this music therapist is just so moving. So these materials kind of help move the needle. But we learned with Ozempic recently that if insurance companies see that the benefit is going to happen when we're on Medicare, they don't want to fund it, especially expensive treatments, which is why these arts interventions are not expensive and they can really help people age better. It benefits insurance and Medicare and Medicaid. So that's another reason for pushing it. But nobody's going to make money off of it. That's a lot of money off of it. That's one of the downsides.
We're going to start with you.
Okay, well, I'm not a musicologist by any means, but I've spent my life with music, both as a, singing and playing instrument. But, I want to know where you draw the line between music and noise. Because the kinds of music that I hear nowadays are these strident sounds. They are literally, to me, noise. And I think it excites people in the wrong way if they are trained on listening to this kind of thing. Because to me, music means melody, harmony, rhythm, a lot of the things that are soothing to the ear and to the mind, I should think. But if one listens to these screechy singers, it's not just bad for the mind, it's bad for the ear.
So the simple answer to this is that all of these therapies are taste-based. So it's what's music to you is the important thing. I literally presented 2 nights ago with an incredible group of practitioners and neurologists in Atlanta. And one practitioner said her go-to for relaxation is Metallica. That is heavy metal. Yeah. Now, I would say she's probably in a small group of music therapists who would say she needs heavy metal. So I really just think, this is why when I meet young people, I say, what do you listen to? What do you like? And it's not necessarily, what I would find. And so many people actually on that panel also surprisingly to me said jazz. But jazz, like classical music, has now a massive spectrum of kinds of jazz or types of classical music. So it's hard to kind of categorize music by a label anymore. So you have to be kind of specific about what you think is beautiful. Does that make sense?
Maybe we should listen to Nick Cave.
Well, I'll tell you, when I go to a store, I'm with you, because I'll go into a store sometimes, a department store, and I'll think, I have to get out of here because I can't stand this woman's voice, because it's just like high pitched and drilling. And I know they've done studies that have shown why we will spend more money if
yes.
that music is played,
Yes.
but I don't pretend to understand how that works.
We have one question here and then we'll end over here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Dana Jacoby. I'm a board certified music therapist at.
Oh, yay. We've
Thank
got
you.
one.
I'm at MedStar National Rehab Hospital. So I work with traumatic brain injury, stroke, spinal cord injury. And my program at my hospital is all philanthropy and grant funded, which is kind of a barrier that we're kind of seeing right now is that, I'm very lucky that I do have a philanthropy program and partners that support music therapy. But then where's the continuum of care after people are discharged from the hospital?
Right.
So kind of going back to this insurance question of, music therapy is not recognizable by insurance and that limits what people can access. And the people who really need it can't access music therapy. So my question is, what would you recommend to music therapists, to other community members? How can we kind of lobby for insurance to recognize us as a viable therapeutic approach to recovery?
So we have our policy expert is here. Andrea, do you want to speak to this? Because you know what? I get asked this now everywhere I present. Because people they get excited and they say, what can we do?
Well, a couple of things. One is that NOAA has been and groups like that have been very active at the state level. I would first also look at the state level. I know that at the federal level, we've been working to try to show through some economic analysis the benefit of coverage. So I think that the first thing I would say is just to advocate in your state and at the federal level with the organizations you belong to. But I think the other level is what we've been working on, trying to get the research and the economic analysis to show the benefit of coverage. And as we begin to, over the next 6 months, I think we're doing with AARP, another one that looks to the quality of life too. So as we get the evidence out there to work with your advocacy organizations and other therapists to really present that to your members of Congress and your state legislature too, because a lot of this is state by state.
So maybe the resource center, will it have a place to go where you can say actionable items for the public? Because that would connect in the fall. And I bet Sound Health Network may already have that on their website because they've been going for a couple of years now. But people have also said we need to be presenting at conferences for hospital directors so that it's even in hospitals consistently. But you're speaking to the fact that even when it is in a hospital, it doesn't continue when the patient is discharged. Right. And that's a shame, unless it's unless they pay for it.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation. My name is Angelica, and outside of my day job, I'm a creative and also an artist in residence at the Georgetown Arts and Humanities program through the Lombardi Center. So we actually provide free programming online. And so my question, I'm trained as a scientist, so I've been trying to see what's the impact of the programming, is to understand what is the impact of arts in community building and developing a sense of belonging, particularly as we kind of navigate this hybrid world of online programming and in-person programming. Thank you.
So I had the privilege of being at an NEA White House convening recently, and I heard an entire day of presentations by people who work in communities around the country, small communities, who are figuring out how to use artists for messaging of positive changes, of bringing together neighborhoods, so many different uses, whether it's painting murals or having festivals around certain issues. Or if somebody wants to kind of make the quality of water better in a community, they'll use artists to kind of message that, creating posters, creating banners, et cetera, et cetera. So I would, sure the NEA is talking about this on their website too, and that the work that they do, how they stretch out the tiny little budget they have to achieve so much positive work around the country is just an inspiration to me. And yet there's still a bellwether for negativity from certain parts of our government, which is such a shame because, I mean, it's just remarkable the amount of good that they do, but artists can get hired for those purposes. And we need to kind of get that word out that, you know, art can change hearts and minds. There's no question. And we know lots of examples of it. So, you know, this project I'm doing for climate, I mean, I literally had college students come up to me after my first concert in Boston where I won a Grammy for Voice of Nature, the Anthropocene. And I said, I want to tour this, but I want film to go with it. And I just coincidentally met the CEO for the National Geographic Society. I didn't even know National Geographic was based in Washington, D.C. They have 1 million square feet. And so I got to go, and he said, yeah, we're going to make your film. And it is beautiful. And I had 2 college kids from Ivy League schools come backstage and say, I said, what'd you think about that? You know, it's a 30-minute film and I sing the music live to go with it. And they said, yeah, thanks for doing that. We forgot about climate. You know, it was a big deal about 5 years ago. And I said, we're depending on your generation to fix this. So, you know, it's another way of, as an artist, finding a platform to advocate for something we care about, that we're excited about. And I tell young singers now, think about healthcare. You know, all of you, most of you who are getting degrees will not work in your chosen field. I'm sorry, that's just the climate for musicians. And I can't speak to other artists. I said, but you can give back. You could still use your art form that you love in service of our healthcare and people who will benefit from it.
I'm thinking about that wonderful experience that you first shared with us about the Supreme Court justices and others sitting in that room together singing Shenandoah. And it almost makes me want to say, reach out and hold the hand of the person next to you. Let's sing a song, because if music and the arts will provide us the solace that we need, I think we're going to be on a very rough path in the future. And I think we need each other, but we also need beautiful ideas and music to help heal us. I can't tell you how many times. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do the song.
Yeah.
There are 4 songs in my career that have been absolutely universal. Ave Maria, Amazing Grace, O mio babbino caro, and Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. So let's do one chorus of Hallelujah together.
Let's do that. But
Okay.
before we do it, let me just say, there are so many times that I and so many others have entered into the opera hall and we've been disturbed or hurting, and we've heard your voice and it's moved us inexpressibly so. And we've left revitalized, energized, and ready for the world. And you've become an incredible ambassador. And at the Aspen Institute, we believe it's important that you not only think about these very complex ideas, but that we work together to move thought to action. And the action is going to be required of all of us in this room, working with Susan, working with Renee, working with Ruth to advance this agenda, which is a very bold and important agenda. Now with that, hallelujah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. Hallelujah. 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 So our brains just aligned. I love that. Thank you.